All right, so it's 12:02. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Again, my name is Magdi Azar. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the REMADE Institute. And over the next hour and a half, members of the REMADE Institute staff, as well as the Technical Leadership Committee, will try to give you an overview of RFP 2301. One piece of housekeeping is we have questions and answers at the end. If you have a question that comes up during the RFP discussion, please enter it into the Q&A. And again, we'll go through those list of questions as we progress throughout the afternoon. So the agenda for today is to provide you some background on the REMADE Institute, and then talk to you about the kinds of proposals we're looking for. At that point, I'll turn it over to the Technical Leadership Committee of the Institute, who will give you an overview of the RFP topics that we're looking for proposals against. I'll walk you through the proposal submission process, and then we'll have time for question and answers. All of the questions that are posted, if they're not already in the FAQ up on the REMADE Project Call website, we will put them up there following this discussion. And again, this will be recorded in case you couldn't stay for all of it. So the REMADE Institute is a DOE-sponsored institute. It's one of 16 manufacturing USA institutes. And our focus is on reducing embodied energy and carbon emissions through early-stage applied R&D. The material classes we focus on are metals, polymers, e-scrap, and fibers. So that's where our focus is. And our goals are really around transforming U.S. manufacturing from a model where we use primary feedstocks that we pull out of the ground, refine, and turn into aluminum or steel or some other material, and replace them with secondary feedstocks that have either come through remanufacturing or where we reuse things, where we recycle things, and then we use them in manufacturing. And the reason why this is important is because if you look at a material like aluminum, the amount of energy it takes to recycle a pound of aluminum is 95% less than the energy required to process primary aluminum. Because we're trying to transform U.S. manufacturing and help U.S. manufacturing competitiveness, the technologies we develop are, we aim to take these and expand them out across the U.S. manufacturing ecosystem to deploy these technologies to help U.S. manufacturers remain competitive. And again, a key part of our mission is to make sure that the workforce of the future and the workforce today are able to handle deployment of these technologies and use of these technologies. So we have a key education and workforce development aspect to our work. Everything I've said so far is discussed in the technical performance metrics here on the right-hand side. It's about reducing primary feedstock consumption, increasing secondary feedstock consumption, increasing embodied energy efficiency, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We also look for opportunities for cross-industry reuse, where, as they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And we're trying to do this at cost and energy parity, because if it requires more energy to process the material or it's more expensive, the uptake of the technologies we're developing just will not be as great. And so cost and energy are two things that we pay a lot of attention to. The way we've organized ourselves is into focus areas or nodes that align to the material life cycle. So if I can refer you to the four icons on the right-hand side, again, those are various stages of the material life cycle, whether it's how we design things to make them easier to disassemble at end of life and recover material, manufacturing, materials optimization, and figuring out ways to increase the use of secondary feedstocks, remanufacturing and end of life reuse, and of course, recycling and recovery. We also have a systems analysis node, which is a cross-cutting node that looks across the breadth of our work to identify opportunities for synergies, to look at opportunities to better understand material flows. We do techno-economic analysis, systems analysis, and again, a lot of the work that they do feeds into the work that helps us define the work we're doing as an institute. What I'd like to do is shift gears for a minute, for a few minutes actually, and talk about the kind of proposals we're looking for. So we're looking for two types of proposals. One is called traditional R&D projects. The other are technology R&D projects. So the only difference between those is in traditional R&D projects, we're trying to validate the technology by the end of the project. And that validation could be through bench scale or process and equipment validation trials. By contrast, technology RD&D projects, we're trying to demonstrate the tools and technology in a relevant or operational environment. And again, the definitions of those are at the bottom. A relevant environment is one that simulates the conditions you expect to see actually during production or operation. Operational, again, is essentially you're seeing the same processing conditions you expect when you go into full production. Anybody any project can be led by a qualified organization, whether it's industry, academia, or national labs. Trade associations are not allowed to lead either the traditional R&D or technology R&D projects. For traditional projects, we are encouraging you to have an industry partner who can actively guide the project because, again, we want to make sure the technologies we're developing are relevant to our industrial base. By contrast, the technology R&D projects, you have to have at least one industry partner who actively manages the project. And we really prefer industry-led projects. We understand that's not always possible for a variety of reasons. For both projects, we're giving up to $1.5 million per project. That needs to be matched by 1-to-1 cost share. And the total funding available for these two types of projects is $10 million. I went back and looked at of the 82 projects we have, the average price of our projects has been around $1 million. So again, you're looking at somewhere in the order of 7 to 10 projects that we're going to be funding out of this RFP. So again, you have to be aligned to the REMADE nodes that I talked about for traditional R&D projects. Given the complexity of the demonstration work that goes on in a technology RD&D project, that might involve more than one node. Both projects will be 24 months. They start with a letter of intent. So for those of you who have applied previously to a REMADE Institute funded RFP, we have eliminated the requirement for a project abstract at the beginning. It's only about letters of intent. It goes through an approval process by REMADE Institute's governing board, followed by DOE approval, at which point we go through project negotiations and incorporate your project into our cooperative agreement. And the membership required, you don't have to be a member to apply to this RFP, but you do by the subaward effective date. And I'll have Sarah Bysham, who's our legal counsel, talk about what that means later in this podcast or webinar. Some of you are going to be very familiar with this chart, which talks about technology readiness levels. Others of you will be less familiar. But when you're looking at technology readiness levels, again, the technology traditional R&D projects were focused on technology validation. The technology RD&D projects are focused on demonstration. So to determine that, you have to ask yourself 4 questions. What type of environment are you conducting the tests in? What are you trying to prove? How realistic is your hardware or your setup versus an actual production setup? And what are you trying to do with the technology? What's the end goal you're trying to do? So let's just walk through these a little bit. And again, for proof of concept, which is a TRL3, you're just trying to prove that the idea you have works, that it actually, in practice, it works. You might be doing analytical studies. You might be doing some simple benchtop studies to try to do that proof of concept. At TRL4, again, you're still in the lab, but you're trying to take individual technology elements, integrate them together, or at least show that they work together. So they may not be integrated, so you may do a process on one machine, take the resulting feedstock, have to take it to a second machine for a second operation, maybe even a third machine. So you're just showing that each individual pieces of the technology work. By the time you get to 5, those technologies are integrated. They might not be fully integrated, but again, it's kind of the equivalent of going from snail mail to email. There's more integration, a more seamless flow of the work that's being done. For technology demonstrations, you're talking about either a relevant environment. So that's basically simulating the most important and most stressing conditions. It might not be entirely the same conditions you'll see in production, but you're very close to that. By contrast, in 7, you're at operational conditions. So you're using the same process parameters you would probably use when you go into production or recycling or remanufacturing. And again, as I talked about earlier, the maturity of what you're working with and trying to prove, at TRL 4. So I'm going to stop talking about TRL 3. At 4, you're talking about components. You're trying to demonstrate that they work together. Again, there's more integration at 5. You're starting to build subsystem or system prototypes. And at 7, you have an actual system prototype. So the next TRL beyond 7 is 8, where you've built a system and you're going into low rate initial production. So again, how realistic are the elements? Are you just starting with individual pieces of technology, what we're calling components, or do you have a breadboard set up somewhere in a lab at a university or national lab? Again, that applies to both 4 and 5. Again, by the time you're getting to 6 and 7, you're looking at a system or a subsystem prototype or a system prototype. And again, the last piece is, what are you trying to do? So for TRL 4, you're trying to validate that the technology works. So you're trying to show that the simulated conditions under which you're operating show a promise that you can mature the technology further. So for 4 and 5, it's in validation. Again, 6 and 7 are in demonstration, where you're trying to demonstrate that at TRL 7, you can operate the system at real world operating conditions, which would be the same as you would see in actual production. One of the things I want to emphasize is what we don't want to have happen for any of you is for you to submit a proposal where you say, well, I think we're at TRL 7 when you're in fact at the end of the project, you're going to get to TRL 5. So if you have questions about that, please write them to the REMADE, the Q&A site that we'll show throughout today, and we'll try to help you understand what technology readiness level that you're going to be at. So again, we've talked about technology RD&D projects. That's one area of interest. We've talked about traditional research and development projects. That's the other area of interest. And so for the technology RD&D projects, we're looking for projects to develop and demonstrate tools and technologies that could have either been developed as part of a prior REMADE Institute funded project. So maybe you got to a TRL 5 in your previous project. What you are doing now is you're looking for funding to take it up to 7, because the motivation for what we're trying to do in technology RD&D projects is to get far enough down the technology path that it motivates industry to further invest in the technology and keep development alive beyond the project. We're also accepting these kind of proposals from teams that have developed their technology independent of REMADE Institute funding. So again, if you think you have a technology that solves the kind of issues that we're trying to solve at REMADE around increasing secondary feedstock consumption, cost and energy parity, reducing energy and emissions, you can apply for a project as well. On the flip side, for the traditional RD&D projects, each of them is aligned to one of the nodes. We don't have any projects for design in this RFP, but again, our technical leadership committee will talk through those. And the way we identified those was, after the last RFP, we looked at projects that said, okay, where do we have gaps in our technology portfolio as defined by the roadmap? We put out a request for information to try to find out from people information about where we stood relative to the work we're doing. Do we have any gaps in our technology? We did industry interviews as well, and that's what has led to the topics that we've defined for topics B1 through B4. Sometimes it's hard to know, well, has REMADE already worked on this project? So in Appendix D of the RFP, we've put a list of every project that REMADE has funded, 82 of them to date. And we've listed them by node and by technical thrust area. So you can read through that list. You can see what material classes they use. Here I'm just showing materials, manufacturing materials optimization, recycling and recovery. But again, all of the nodes are there. And if you see an asterisk next to a project like removing trace contaminants and recycled metals, that's a project that's already completed. I think we've completed roughly 28 of the 82 projects. So that is to help you. If you want further information, you can go to the REMADE website, where we have a brief description of each of those projects and what they're trying to achieve. So again, spend some time if you think the idea you're proposing might duplicate something. Spend some time looking at this to see that you're proposing something that's relevant. So we put in a list of non-responsive topics. We do this in every RFP. And so if something is on this list, we don't want proposals for it. And really, the reason we don't want proposals for these topics is either one of two issues. Either it's outside the scope of where REMADE focuses on. So for example, projects related to composite recycling, which is at the bottom. In other cases, we already have enough projects related to that technology. And so we don't need more projects related to that technology. We've got a full portfolio. So again, pay attention to these. We always seem to get a bunch of projects focused on, hey, let me try to recover and recycle additive manufacturing feedstocks. It's a good project, but we're not interested in it because particularly in metals, the volume of material you're talking about compared to the volume of steel or aluminum that's produced every year and used in the US, it dwarfs what we use in steel and aluminum, plastics, and other materials dwarf what you're going to get in feedstock. So we're not looking for those kind of projects. Again, the one thing I will talk about is for a topic A1 and A2, again, it could be that you have a project that REMADE has previously funded and it shows up on this list. Can you not apply? Well, because we're trying to demonstrate the technology, you could apply if you're under topic A1 or A2. If it's for topic B1 through B4, we're not interested in topics related to these proposals related to these topics. I've talked a little bit about this, but again, just to reiterate, for technology RD&D projects, they have to impact our technical performance metrics, which the DOE has defined. You'll find them in Appendix A of the RFP. We want to demonstrate the tools and technology in a relevant or operational environment. So if you're not proposing to hit TRL 6 or TRL 7, your project or your proposal will be considered out of scope and non-responsive to this RFP. So pay attention to that. Again, it could align to one node, it could align to many nodes, but we also want to understand how that technology solution is going to get integrated into the supply chain. And we want you to articulate how that's going to happen. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, our goal is to take the technology far enough that it motivates subsequent industry investment in these technologies. We're not trying to develop technology for technology's sake. The last thing we want is to see technologies orphaned. So it's important that you pay attention to that. And again, you have to have at least one industry partner who actively guides the project. What I'll reiterate over and over again throughout this time together is the fact that we have to, we're looking for teams that can do what we want to do. They can pull from industry, they can pull from national labs, they can pull from academic institutions. But again, we want projects that are clearly aligned to what industry is looking for. And the best way to do that is to have a member of industry on your team. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara Reck, who will talk about the systems analysis and integration RFP topic. And Barbara, I can just run the slides for you. Oops, are you there?
Thank you, Magdi. It took a little to get online. So thanks very much. So in the systems node, what we would like to do this year is get an overview on the healthcare sector and how the healthcare sector can move towards more circularity and less use of disposable items. And that's particularly true for plastics and metalware. And metalware seems a little counterintuitive, and we're really talking like stainless steel, which is a very valuable, high embodied energy metal that is still or is at times actually increasingly used as a single-use material for logistical reasons at times, because different the operating room has a different budgeting organization than the office next door or the lab next door, and therefore it's really what we were told is that single use is just easier than sort of getting the different units within the hospital to share a sterilizing equipment, etc. And that from a circularity perspective just doesn't seem to make much sense. So what we would like to try to understand is get a high-level overview on what are the amounts of single-use metals and also, of course, also plastics, and what are the options for more renewables, for more reuse of materials, apologies. And that should then also be combined with a sort of first order cost analysis of, well, what would moving to more renewable or for reusable materials, what would be the effect, what would be the cost, when does it make sense, what are the cutoffs possibly, and what is basically the feasibility of moving sort of to different material management. And we would like to see specific approaches that people propose. But what I think is also, because this is a relatively broad project, if people want to just sort of specialize on maybe one or two material groups and not do everything, that is fine as long as it is relevant. So the calculations of, well, what would be the impact, they need to be clear that this is an impactful project. Thank you, Magdi.
Thanks, Barbara. Next, we'll move on to manufacturing materials optimization, RFP topics. And to present that will be Alan Lowe, who's our Deputy NO lead for MMO. Alan? I think you're on mute. There you go.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to present the topic B2. This is on manufacturing processes and the qualification methods that enable greater use of cost-competitive secondary feedstocks, including cross industry feedstocks. I'm leading the material manufacturing optimization node. In this area, we try to bring in more secondary materials in the manufacturing process chain, across all kinds of materials and also all kinds of secondary feedstocks and different type of manufacturing processes. In this particular call, we are emphasizing two sub areas. Number one, that's A here, is on the manufacturing process optimization, that anything you can do to either reduce primary material consumption or increasing secondary feedstocks. Again, this applies to all kinds of manufacturing processes. You can improve the efficiencies, or you can introduce more secondary materials, reduce scrap rate. Anything you do that will either enhance the secondary material use or reduce the primary material use is in scope. We specifically encourage the use of the secondary material that are cross industry feedstocks. For example, you could use a rod alloy feedstock and use that for cast material, or vice versa. These type of different manufacturing processes. So it is open to all kinds of processes and also all kinds of materials that we deal with. So that's in the first topic. The second subtopic is really, this is based on the member feedback to looking into the current new technologies such as machine learning or artificial intelligence to help us to maximize the use of secondary materials. As we know in the previous projects we have been doing, if you introduce secondary feedstock, you always getting into the situations to deal with more chemical or material variations in the manufacturing process chain as compared to the primary material. So how we handle the complex situations of accommodating secondary materials, we believe the new tools, the machine learning tools, the artificial intelligence techniques will handle this more complex situation very well. So again, in this subtopic area, we are open to the 4 material classes. We talk about metals, fibers, e-waste, and polymer composites type of materials. We wanted to explore or apply these techniques, the new tools, so that we can enhance the manufacturing process efficiency by accommodating more secondary materials. I think these are the 2 specific areas which are still very broad, but we emphasize in this topic B2 area. Thanks, Magdi.
Thank you, Alan.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we'll move on to remanufacturing and end-of-life reuse, and Mike Thurston, who's the node lead, will present these topics.
Hi, Magdi. Thanks for
Hey, Mike.
introduction. So in the remanufacturing and reuse, end-of-life reuse node, we're looking to put materials back into service at kind of the highest level of value, energy, and economic value. So not recycling and recovering the materials, but putting back into service with the value-added manufacturing effort and energy and value that went into the product. So the topic areas that we're interested in for the next RFP, the current RFP, are utilization of machine learning or artificial intelligence to facilitate condition assessment of used products and components. So assessing the state of those components to determine if they're repairable or reusable. So 2 specific areas that are noted are non-destructive inspection and evaluation of used products to determine the residual value for remanufacturing, reuse, or repair, and non-destructive inspection or evaluation of mechanical, electronic, or electromechanical components or systems to determine suitability for reuse or repair. So the first one being kind of more at the product or the core level, and the second one more at the component level, or both in scope. The second area and the next 2 areas we'll talk about kind of focus on green technologies. So we don't have any projects currently in the remanufacturing portfolio related to wind turbines yet. So a couple areas that we're interested in are development of repair process for wind turbine components where no cost-effective repair process currently exists, and that could include on-site repair or improvement in existing repair processes that improve the reuse yield or the number of times that a part can be repaired for reuse. And finally, the other area, again, kind of the green technology area, is related to electric vehicles and EV batteries. So the areas of interest from a remanufacturing, reuse, and repair standpoint are cost-effective approaches to repair high-value EV components. So it might be a power supply or a drive system component, a motor. Second, methods to repurpose or reconfigure battery packs and the component cells for EV or alternative applications. And finally, non-destructive inspection or evaluation methods for electric vehicle battery modules or battery module components. So kind of at the similar to the earlier one, at the product level, at the module level, or at the component level.
Thanks, Mike. And then the B4, Vicki Thompson, our Deputy No Lead, will talk about recycling and recovery topic, RFP topics.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can, Vicki, thanks.
Thanks, Maggie. So in the recycling recovery, we're focused on 4 different areas that represent gaps or places in the current recycling chain that aren't economic. So the first one is increasing the recycling rate of materials that just aren't recycled at all or at very low levels, which includes the number 3 through 7 plastics, textiles, apparel, and then PET thermoform packaging. We're interested in both mechanical and chemical recycling technologies for these or combinations of both. And as said above, we really want to identify things that aren't currently recycled very much. We're also encouraging proposals to develop technology to increase PET thermoform packaging recycling and using it to combine with PET bottles to produce bottle grade rPET. Another area where things don't work too well in the recycling industry is being able to identify materials. And so we want to improve the yield, throughput, and accuracy when sorting. Topics of interest include automation techniques to sort waste, as well as adaptive sorting technologies that can change how the things are sorted when changes in the waste stream occur. Specific applications are separation of non-used beverage containers from used beverage containers in the MRF, cost-effective automated methods to sort textiles into numerous market grades that are listed there, novel sorting technologies for various types of alloys, which aren't easy to identify. And this would prevent mixing different alloy grades, which ends up downcycling the material. And then identification of innovative mechanical and optic sorting configurations for rural communities. Right now, it's not cost effective in rural communities to recycle. Most of those materials end up in landfills. And we want to be able to come up with a cost competitive single stream recycling targeting 1 to 15 tons per hour. Next slide, please. The third one is cost-effective physical, chemical, and biochemical separation of metals, polymers in photovoltaics and electric vehicles. So topics of interest, separating those materials, hybrid techniques that combine approaches, i.e. physical and chemical, or apply machine learning and artificial intelligence are also encouraged. And then the last one is rapid, robust, cost-effective characterization, standardization, and decontamination of recycled materials. One of the areas where materials aren't recycled very well is due to contamination, i.e. the classic pizza box, which has the cheese and oil in it, can't be recycled because of that contamination. So we're looking for technologies to detect and characterize the presence of contaminants that are on metals, plastics, fibers, and e-scraps. Looking for assessing and standardizing the composition of these streams by material or application, technologies that could potentially remove contaminants from the waste streams, and technologies that look at machine and artificial intelligence to adjust decontamination procedures. So for example, if you have a lot of contaminated metal, you might go to one decontamination process. If all of a sudden you have a lot of contaminated papers, then you might move to another one. There are topics not responsive to recycling recovery, and that includes recycling of batteries, recovery of rare earth metals, and recycling materials that already have an established market, which would be things like newsprint, corrugated cardboard, 1 and 2 plastics, and various types of metals.
All right. Thanks, Vicki. Thanks, everybody, for giving those overviews. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. We're seeing some questions, and we'll address those at the end. So because the process has changed, we want to walk through that and talk a little bit about it. Let me start with the motivation. So I spent 20 years at GE before switching to a different role. And most of the projects we pitched and got funded were done using PowerPoint presentations, not writing proposals for internal GE projects. And so one of the things we wanted to do was encourage more industry engagement in the writing of or developing of proposals. For our academic, our national lab partners, this is your bread and butter. You do it every day. When you signed up for careers in these areas, you signed up to write proposals. But industry doesn't necessarily have that experience. And so what we wanted to do is provide a mechanism that would allow industry to help shape the projects more actively than they might have in the past. And so what we've done is we've said, okay, we're just going to have you submit a letter of intent. Says who's going to be there. We'll talk about what goes into that. And your proposal consists of a 5-page concept paper. So a low barrier to entry to just describe at a very high level what you're doing. A SOPO, which describes your tasks, your milestones, the scope of your work, and then a PowerPoint presentation so that you can explain through an oral presentation what you intend to do in your project. Now, part of the motivation for going to oral presentations is because there have been instances in the past where a project might not have been selected or recommended for funding because perhaps some of the information that the reviewers were talking about was maybe not as accurate. So they didn't necessarily have all the information. Or the other piece of it might be that the way the proposal was written, it wasn't clear what the intent was. And so there was some inference in there that may or may not have been correct. So we're going to orals to try to eliminate that. So merit review panels will be held. That will lead to orals where the merit review panels will actually give you, in addition to your 16 slides, here's the things we want you to cover that we didn't quite understand. So that's the first part, that proposal submission and review process. The second part is negotiation. So once DOE has approved what we've recommended for funding and the governance board has recommended, then you'll update your SOPO and your budget with the help of our REMADE finance staff and the project managers. Once those are ready, we'll submit them to the contract manager who will review them and then incorporate them into the cooperative agreement. So I mentioned the subaward effective date. That subaward effective date is when the project gets incorporated into the cooperative agreement and DOE signs off on that. So you have to be a member by that time. And then again, we'll issue subawards. Sarah Bisham, our legal counsel, will talk about that in a bit. I mentioned earlier, we really encourage you to team. And again, to provide opportunities for you to team, we're hosting 2 sessions next week to host live teaming opportunities to identify places where, hey, I'm looking for somebody who has expertise in this technology, or I have expertise in this technology if teams are looking for this kind of experience. One of the things that we found from RFP 5 was that even if 2 entities might not have proposed, written a proposal together, the interactions they had through the teaming events led them to identify a DOE proposal that they jointly went after and got funded. So going to the teaming sessions, which will be recorded, will be helpful for getting you and your who you are out there, but they could lead to other opportunities as well. So I talked about where do I submit questions earlier. Here's the subject line and the place that you submit those questions. We'll post those on the REMADE Institute website FAQs as we get those questions in. So the letter of intent really is pretty simple. It's, what topic are you going to address? Are you doing a technology RD&D or a traditional R&D project? Who's going to be on your team? Who's the lead contact, the lead organization? Because we recognize that sometimes for various reasons, one of the members that you identified on your team can't participate in your proposal, you might have to find other team members. So whatever you put as far as proposal team members is not binding. So we recognize that those changes are going to occur for a variety of reasons. Again, it gives us a sense of how many proposals we expect to be submitted. Usually we're getting around 60 proposals for every RFP. And we want to make sure we know in which areas, because we try to be proactive in identifying merit review panelists who have the expertise to be able to assess the proposals that you write and submit. Even if you're kind of on the fence about whether you intend to submit a proposal, I encourage you to submit an LOI, because if you don't, you won't be eligible to submit a proposal. Again, there's some other requirements about who can lead that we've talked about, who can't lead, how you submit it. And we will send you a note back saying we did receive your LOI. Depending on the volume of LOIs we get, it may be that day, it may be the next day, but we will get back to you as soon as possible. What we tell people is, and this is especially important now because we're not looking at project abstracts, don't wait to hear back from us. Just keep moving as though you're going to go ahead and submit the proposal so that you don't lose any time. The due date is Monday, March 27th. And we purposely made that the due date because the week before, and I'll talk about it at the end, REMADE is hosting a circular economy tech summit and conference in DC. It is going to be a great conference. We have a great list of speakers. Andrew Morley from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is going to speak, as well as a number of other folks. And 60 some papers will be presented about REMADE projects and projects beyond what REMADE is doing. And that would be a great place for you to have an opportunity to find that last partner that you're looking for, or to, even with partners that you already have identified, to kind of flesh out the proposal in person in working sessions during those 2 days. So we'll talk about that more going forward. Here's what is required for it to be compliant. Again, you got to use the template we provide. It's on the Project Call website. You got to meet the requirements outlined for eligibility in section 3.1. You got to have at least one industry. For technology RD&D projects, you got to have at least one industry member. And again, you got to submit by 5 p.m. on the 27th. As far as the proposals, the top is just the naming convention for your proposal. So we have a consistent format. Submit it electronically again. And I'll walk through each of these, but what's part of the package is that 5-page concept paper, the 16-page PowerPoint or 16-slide PowerPoint presentation, the statement of project objectives, your IP management plan, and your budget. And that's due on Wednesday, April 26th, again at 5 p.m. Eastern time. One of the things that I'll reinforce later is, at the end of the day, you submit one budget. So the lead organization submits one budget, but every member of your team has to put together that budget justification Excel template that explains where your costs are coming from, what cost share you're providing, what equipment you're proposing to buy or lease, what material you want to buy. So everything that the team members put in their budgets gets rolled up by the lead organization. So everybody has to submit that. And again, the 26th is the due date for proposals. I won't read through all of these, but again, it's in the RFP as far as what are the requirements for your proposal to be compliant. The two things I just want to emphasize here is your cost share letters have to collectively commit to providing one-to-one cost share. Doesn't have to be that everybody provides one-to-one cost share, but you do have to provide one-to-one cost share. And so those letters have to commit that. They can't say, put a bunch of conditions on it. You have to commit that cost share should your project be selected. Again, all of the templates are on the RFP Project Call website. The criteria we use to evaluate the proposals for the merit review panels is the same criteria that we've used previously. It's technical merit, technical approach, REMADE impact and commercialization potential, and team and management capabilities. You'll notice that technology RD&D projects have a different weighting score than traditional RD&D projects, and that's because they're actually developing and demonstrating that technology. So how they're doing it, how they propose to conduct those demonstrations is a key part of that. And so we want to clearly understand what you're proposing to do. I promise you I will not read through all of these, but again, for each of the 4 criteria I mentioned, you have a description of what we're looking for, or the requirement we're looking for, and then what would constitute an excellent score. So again, I'm not going to read through those. What I want to highlight is there are some of them that are in bold. These only apply to tech demonstration or tech RD&D projects. So if you're putting together a traditional R&D project, you're not being expected to deliver those requirements unless your proposal is actually you're submitting against a traditional R&D project, but you think you could get to TRL 7 by the end, and that is 6 or 7. In that case, you would have to address them. But again, you can see what's specific to technology RD&D projects. The rest apply to both types of projects. And again, explain why we have different weightings for the scores. So let me walk through quickly the elements of the proposal documents, the 5-page concept paper, the PowerPoint presentation, the SOPO, the IP management plan, and the budget. So if you look at the top half, you see what's kind of the body of the concept paper. It's executive summary, problem statement, and REMADE relevance, goals and TPM impacts, technical approach and team qualifications, your technology demonstration and technology transition activities, and then risk abatement plans, budgets, and timelines. Again, the template lays out what you're expected to provide in each of those. One of the complaints we've gotten back historically about our project templates is we ask you, say in the executive summary, to identify what are the technical and economic barriers and what are the underlying knowledge gaps that need to be addressed. And we ask that question over and over and over. So you end up chewing up space in subsequent sections, answering questions that you've already addressed. So we've tried to, in the 5-page concept paper template, strip out as much redundancy as we have. So each section builds on its statement. You know, the problem statement tells what you're going to do. The goals and impacts say what you're going to achieve and how it's going to affect the TPMs. Your approach and team qualifications will explain, here's what we intend to do and how we intend to do it. And then here's what happens at the end of the project. There are resume appendices that you need to use to provide your, again, the resumes of the PI and the team members, cost share commitment letters, the IP management plan, and then references that you've got. For the PowerPoint presentation, if any of you have worked on a REMADE project, this PowerPoint template is very similar to what is used for technology reviews or the biannual reviews with the DOE AMTO team. So it should be familiar to you, but again, a lot of the elements in those first 4 slides, kind of, here's what we propose to do, here's the impact it's going to have. So those are very simple. The meat of what you're going to do to explain to us in your orals should be focused on the technical approach, task lists, and milestone tables. And you got 6 slides to do that in. So let me give you an example of how you might spend those 6 slides. So let's say that the project that you're proposing has 3 key technical elements. So the first page might lay out, here's all of the technical elements of this project and how they fit together to help us achieve what we're trying to achieve. The next 3 pages might cover 1 slide on each of the elements of the technical approach. You know, what's been done before, what are we proposing to do differently, how's that going to make a difference? So that takes you up to 4. Again, a task list and milestone table you could probably put on 1, and then you can kind of put a summary together. But really, when it comes to orals, and we'll say this over and over again, focus on communicating the technical approach, the task list, and the milestone tables. You know, because again, we want you to be as clear as possible so we don't misunderstand anything, so that we do the best job we can selecting projects. And then again, you've got the other elements there, roles and responsibilities. And when we talk about roles and responsibilities, who's on your team? You know, what's University A going to do, and National Lab B, and Company C and Company D going to do relative to the tasks that you've talked about previously. The backup slide is just a divider. You can put references in backup, but we'll only take those 16 slides. So don't put 30 pages of backup slides to illustrate what you're trying to do that you hope to refer to during orals, because you only have 20 minutes to cover the material, and we'll strip out anything that's beyond what's here before orals. So don't count on trying to put a lot of stuff in backup. Make it concise and tight. And again, this is where your industry partners will be crucial. They know how to do this very well. A word about risks and risk abatement plans. Every project has risks. It's just inherent in the nature of research. And just because you don't identify a risk doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Sometimes we see people who either identify one or two risks because you're supposed to, or they give them low scores thinking if we can show that there's no risk here, we have a better chance of success. We know there's risk. We want you to clearly identify what those risks are and how you're going to address it. So parts of a risk abatement plan is, what is the risk? My cursor here. There we go. What's the risk? Is it a cost, schedule, or technical risk? What's the probability you're going to experience that risk? And what's the impact if you do experience that risk? So high counts for 3, medium counts for 2, low counts for 1. You multiply probability by impact, and it automatically gives you the risk score. So what are you going to do to address that risk? So for probability, again, some general guidelines. You already know it's an issue. Medium, it could be an issue. Again, if the score is 6 or above, when you look at probability and impact, tell us how you're going to address it. Low, it's not likely to occur. Same with impact. What's the impact if this risk shows up? And we've given you some examples to help estimate risk, both as far as cost, schedule, and time, relative to the delays that it might incur, or extra costs that you might incur, or the end result that you'll achieve. So again, spend some time on this so that you can clearly articulate what the risks are and how you're going to deal with them. SOPOs, again, if you've done a REMADE project in the past or you've done another project for AMTO, SOPOs are just part of the scope of the work that you put together. Every team that has a REMADE project will write a SOPO. In the past, we've asked for what we call preliminary SOPOs to try to expedite that 4 to 5 months on the back end after projects have been selected. We're asking you to write an actual SOPO, and our project manager, director of strategic programs, Ed Daniels, has done a great job putting together the template for the SOPO that clearly describes what you need to put in each section and how you need to write it. So it's very straightforward. But the major sections are project objectives, the technical scope, a summary, a list of tasks, and a description of tasks, the milestones and go/no decision points. Project management and reporting you don't really do much with, because again, it just says here's what we intend to report out on a monthly basis, quarterly, annually, and then a milestone summary table that summarizes everything. A couple of words about milestones and go/no decision points. You're expected to have a minimum of 1 milestone per quarter. So if you're doing a 24-month project, you would have 8 milestones. As opposed to some other funding agencies, these milestones should really reflect attainment of a tangible, measurable result. So writing a report is not a milestone because it doesn't show that you're moving the project forward. We want to see technical progress as you pass each milestone. The other piece is for projects over a year, you have to have a go/no-go milestone, at least 1 every year. So at the end of 12 months, you have a go/no-go milestone. If you pass it, you go on to year 2 and continue the project. So be aware of that. And again, SMART milestones, you've seen what that is. We've explained it here. I won't read through those. The budget sheets. So the budget sheets have all of these tabs. And so the lead organization, as I said, puts together the overall master budget for the whole team, but everybody's got on the team has to put together their own budget justification worksheet. I talked about it earlier. Cost share does have to be 1-to-1. It's at the team level. So not every member has to come up with one-to-one cost share. Again, from an evaluation standpoint, industry cost share is viewed more favorably, and we've set out a threshold for the level of industry cost share we're asking for technology RD&D projects. Again, there's different kinds of cost share. If you have questions about that, I would refer you to Michelle Gibson, who's our finance director, and her email address is here. Want to just talk a little bit about team members and suppliers, because sometimes we've had an organization that didn't want to become a member of REMADE, but they wanted to participate in the project. So they identified themselves as suppliers, when in fact they were team members. The difference is team members have a specific role or function on the team. They're responsible for specific tasks or milestone, and you have to be a member. So an example of something a team member would do is, we're going to produce 500 pounds of this secondary feedstock for a pilot test. Suppliers, by contrast, are delivering a service or a material that's part of their standard stuff. So they might be doing tensile testing of samples that you produce. They don't have a role on the team, but beside doing that testing, they don't have to be a member of REMADE. And again, an example is a supplier is going to provide you 500 pounds of material for 2K for some of the work that you're going to do. So it's very important. You can't just say, I don't want to be a member of REMADE, so I'm just going to say I'm a supplier. Those things don't fly when it comes to evaluation and negotiation of the proposal. So I think this is the last slide about the process. And there's 3 steps to this, and I'll walk through each of them. The first step is that whole process of the merit review panels, the oral presentations, and then at the end of the oral presentations, the merit review panels meet and they pitch out to myself, the TLC, the project managers, to say, these are the projects we recommend that you fund from this RFP. So it's all about technical merit. How's the technical merit? Once that happens, the technical leadership committee will look at those recommendations. They'll look at our project portfolio. Do we already have a lot of projects in this area, or are the impacts of a project not very significant? So the impact of that project wouldn't necessarily warrant maybe the kind of funding they're trying to get. So this, the TLC and the project managers will look at those recommendations from the merit review panels, and they'll develop their own recommendations that are presented to the governance board. So that's all about alignment. Is the projects that have been recommended, are they aligned to the project or our scope of work? And then you enter the negotiation phase. So we'll present to the governance board, here's the projects. We'll give them a high-level summary of each project, and the governance board votes project by project whether to fund a project or whether not to fund a project. If they don't approve funding of a project, they've got to provide a written response why. And again, all of their approvals are subject to DOE recommendation. At which point, after it's gone through all of that, you go through negotiations and the project gets incorporated into the cooperative agreement. The key things from this that you need to understand is the CTO and TLC in that middle section around developing recommendations. We can't overturn the merit review panels. In other words, we can't go back and say, this project that they said don't fund, we think it's a great project. So we're just going to arbitrarily say, let's fund this project. We don't do that. So we won't overturn those. Similarly, the governance board can't say, well, what else you got in the portfolio that we might think is worth funding? That's not how it works. Their role is either to approve or disapprove a project. So it's a pretty straightforward, transparent process. And if you got questions, again, we can discuss them later. Membership, I just want to mention that there are different types of membership. If you have questions about membership, please refer to John Krekel, who's the Director of Membership and Workforce Development. Again, I would, if you're not already a member, start early talking about this because there's a lot of things that you need to think about. Again, this last piece about connecting and helping connect if you couldn't attend the teaming sessions or you're having trouble finding partners, contact John, contact myself, and we'll try to help you find potential teaming members. That typically looks like, here's a number of companies who we believe have that expertise that you could contact, and that's how we do it. So we're not trying to pick winners and losers or favorites. We're going to give you a slate of organizations that might fit what your needs are. Just want to point that out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Bisham, who's going to talk through some of the contractual issues related to REMADE projects. Sarah? Sarah, are you there?
Yes, are you able to hear me? I've been watching the updates roll here.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm
Yeah.
on mute. Okay, great. Okay, so our DOE award is a cooperative agreement with substantial involvement of our sponsoring agency. And that is due to the size of our project, the significant amount of funding, and its public purpose and its visibility. So based on that structure, subawards are granted from REMADE to the lead organization on the project. And subaward agreements are signed by REMADE and that lead organization. DOE does not enter into those agreements. The lead organization is responsible for contracting with all project team members. And so Magdi mentioned, for example, the lead organization has responsibility for the overall budget for the entire project, but each project team member must put together its own budget for its component of the project. Contractually, the terms of our DOE award flow down and are incorporated in each subaward agreement. So the lead organization turns around and causes each of its project team members to be bound by these same requirements. And these terms include things like US government regulations, agency-specific requirements, approved compliance plans that are included in REMADE membership documents. And these are our operative documents. I'm going to highlight a couple of those when we get to the next slide. Magdi mentioned early in this call that while you don't need to be a REMADE Institute member to submit a proposal, each project team member for proposals selected to be negotiated must complete REMADE Institute membership by the date that the subaward agreement becomes effective. And that date is when the DOE incorporates the project into our cooperative agreement. The membership requirement applies to all organizations providing matching cost share toward the project or receiving federal funding through the REMADE Institute. And to be eligible, the organizations must each join the REMADE Institute either as a Tier 1 or Tier 2 industry member or an academic member in the case of colleges and universities. As I'll mention on the next slide, membership for foreign entity team members requires an additional step. And we really urge teams to be proactive in bringing team members on board and starting the membership process to ensure that the project launch isn't delayed. I also want to mention, and Magdi just emphasized with that slide about team members and suppliers. The membership requirement does not apply to vendors or service providers and who are providing goods and services as part of their normal business operations, if that's another helpful way of thinking of that distinction. So for a project to launch, the project SOPO, NEPA, and budget must be fully agreed with REMADE and approved by the DOE. A subaward agreement incorporating all required terms must be signed by REMADE and the lead organization. And there has to be a DOE issued modification to our award that identifies the project for funding. So can we go to the next slide? At a high level, our membership agreement and subaward agreements include federal flowdowns and member vested rights that are all integral components of participation in the REMADE Institute. While a lot of the flow down regulations, requirements, and plans are relatively standard or consistent with general expectations for government funded projects, I want to quickly highlight a couple of requirements in our award that maybe are a little less standard. The first set of those involves terms driven by the fact that this award is designed to promote U.S. industry and significantly enhance U.S. global competitiveness. So for this reason, excuse me, certain additional conditions apply in exchange for access to this source of federal funding. The first is the foreign participation plan. You'll see that on the left column. Foreign entity membership in the REMADE Institute and participation in REMADE projects is subject to DOE approval, and it's based on demonstrating benefits to U.S. manufacturing objectives. So this requirement in this plan applies not only to a foreign legal entity, but also to U.S. legal entities with a foreign corporate parent. The process involves application and recommendation to the DOE that the REMADE team will administer, and we work with you and submit and shepherd it through the DOE review process. The next one is performance of work outside the US. This is also on the left column. Under the terms of our award, all work is required to be performed within the United States unless DOE grants a waiver on a showing of specific benefits to US manufacturing objectives. The third is foreign national access. Now we're on the right column. The DOE reserves the right at any time to require information concerning foreign nationals involved in our projects. Foreign nationals may be involved in REMADE projects. In the past, the foreign national involvement had to be approved in advance by the DOE. The DOE no longer requires advance approval, but they do reserve the right to request information about foreign national involvement in the course of a project. And if they do that, REMADE will facilitate and support communications between the project team and the DOE to handle those submissions. If you plan or anticipate that you may be involving foreign nationals and you want more information about this term, you can look at it's term 51 and the link on the slide to the award special terms and conditions under the right column. Right there, if you click on that, go to the special terms and term 51, and you will see what the DOE is looking for. And another term, which is on the left column, is U.S. manufacturing plan, which includes the U.S. competitiveness provision. This requires the applicant to commit to support U.S. manufacturing as a result of getting this award from REMADE. Products embodying project IP must be substantially manufactured in the U.S. Processes developed through the project must be implemented and maintained in the U.S. prior to and despite any foreign implementation. This plan is included in our award with standard government IP provisions, including by DOL, and this is also linked in the materials. The plan does, the U.S. manufacturing plan and U.S. competitiveness provision does contemplate exceptions based on demonstrating measurable benefits to U.S. manufacturing and U.S. economy, but it remains a firm and non-negotiable condition on funding, as do all government flow downs. Another term I want to highlight is the REMADE Intellectual Property Management Plan, or IPMP. This is also linked to the materials. The IPMP sets up a waterfall of cascading priority licensing options available to REMADE project team members and other REMADE Institute members. The licensing framework applies to all REMADE project IP. Whether any negotiation will actually be requested or a license will be concluded or the terms of any license will always depend on the specific project parties and business case. All award terms and operative documents are incorporated in our membership agreement and each project subaward agreement. The federal flow downs and rights vesting in all members on joining the Institute are firm requirements, and we cannot negotiate those away. So just to set expectations up front. That said, we do have flexibility to negotiate other terms that don't conflict with vesting rights or are not dictated by regulation or specific agency requirement. Magdi?
Thanks, Sarah. So I have just a few more slides before we get to the questions, and thanks for providing those. I mentioned it earlier, there's 2 opportunities for live teaming. Again, there's the link. They're open to all interested parties. We encourage you to register beforehand. So again, it's an opportunity to find partners for your project. Again, here are the due dates: the letter of intent, March 27th, proposals, April 26th. We expect to notify teams in June, and anticipated start date February of next year. Want to put out a pitch. If you're interested in being a merit review panelist, we encourage you to go to this site and sign up. Again, merit reviewers are a key part of this whole process, and we would welcome you sharing your expertise as part of the whole proposal process. And then I mentioned at the beginning, on March 20th and 21st at the National Academy of Sciences building in DC, we're going to hold our Circular Economy Tech Summit and Conference. This is the first time we've held this. It replaces our traditional internal tech summit. We encourage you, it's not too late to sign up. And again, you'll have great opportunities to identify or work with team members during that 2-day event to be able to help move your proposals forward. And again, we've purposely set the letter of intent due date after this conference. And so with that, let me open it up to questions. We're running pretty well on time. So let me just, I'll just read them, and then for topic A1, are you able to take someone else's funded REMADE Institute project and develop and demonstrate it? So I'm going to interpret what I think that means. So if a prior project has developed some technology, that project team or members of that project team don't want to submit a proposal, could you take that and submit a proposal? As long as they're okay with that, you could. One of the things I would encourage you, particularly for those of you who are on technology RD&D projects, if you've had a prior project, but you don't have all the expertise on your team that you need, I encourage you to go find other project team members. So if you put in a technology RD&D project, it doesn't have to be the exact team that you had for your original REMADE project. Same thing for folks submitting it against A2. So hopefully that answers your question. If it didn't, please type in and clarify. Are software RD&D projects eligible for this RFP? I'm not sure what, I mean, I understand what a software RD&D project is. What I would say is if the software is part of the work scope, say maybe for systems analysis project on healthcare, reusing plastics and metals, or another project, or if you have to develop software relative to AI and machine learning, yes. Historically, a lot of our software RD&D projects have been associated with design projects where they're trying to integrate the tools and technology they develop into CAD packages. Again, for any of these, if I don't answer your question, let me know. Curious to know why projects looking at recovery and recycling of building materials and C&D waste is outside REMADE scope. Well, if you look at those materials, some of them like steel, certainly within our scope, but the steel in the construction industry and building industry, highly recycled. So there's already a good mechanism to collect that material and process it. And the steel is just one example. That's why we're not looking for projects in that area. Will there be a point of contact list, emails, phone numbers, and areas of interest provided to assist with teaming? So again, certainly for the teaming projects, you will see who signed up for those and have an opportunity to, identify partners both during that time and after that time. I believe, I haven't gone back and looked, but I believe there is a thing you have to sign when you sign up for the teaming agreement. I agree to share, my information with those on the call. So just to keep that in mind, we don't want to spam any of you through this teaming session, but we also want to make sure there's opportunities to connect after the teaming session. Are the monomer manufacturing processes included? If you are talking about chemical recycling to take it back to monomers, the answer would be yes. So it seems the typical funding will be $1.5 million. It suggests that REMADE is going to fund some big projects this time. Have they eliminated exploratory grants, 100 to 500K in this round? So we, for those of you who may not be familiar, the first 3 RFPs, we had exploratory projects. These were 100K to 200K of REMADE funding plus cost share to try to prove out a proof of concept or some idea that you thought had legs but had significant risk associated with it. So we give you a year to retire that risk so you can go after a full project. We funded 20 of them. We haven't in the last 2 RFPs, nor are we doing those exploratory projects this round. Will funding be spread evenly across all categories, or will some have priority or emphasis over another? We're not, in some prior RFPs, we've said, okay, like last one, we said, there's $10 or $20 million for transformational projects, and there's another $10 million for traditional R&D projects. We're looking at in mass. What I would say is technology R&D projects that propose to mature technology that's already been developed to a TRL 6 or 7. Those probably will get some priority because, again, we're trying to move things closer to the point that industry is willing to pick it up and put in the investment to see it through to full production. Thank you for the webinar. You mentioned that a proposal should focus on a specific topic. When the different subtopics are listed A, B, C, does the proposal need to focus on only one of those subtopics? Or is it possible to have coverage of multiple within the same umbrella topic? So the short answer is if all of those topics, like Vicki talked about recycling, we had 4 topics. If your project addresses all of those topics and you think you can put together a coherent proposal, there's nothing saying you can't do that. But I would encourage you to, more than trying to check every box for A, B, C, D, or however many subtopics there are for each node, is make sure the idea you're proposing is well aligned to at least one of them. No extra credit for covering multiple ones, but if you're able to, great. Some of the work that we would like to propose would be done in our company's wholly owned subsidiary based in the EU. Could this work done outside of the US contribute toward one-to-one cost share? What I would say is that's a question to put in the Q&A, and I'll have Sarah look at it. Sarah Bysham look at it, and we can get you a response. Could a European university be allowed as a research partner? Development will be here in the USA. To my knowledge, we haven't funded any non-US institutions, academic institutions, because again, we're trying to accrue the benefits for the US, and there's the test of why is DOE giving foreign universities money to develop technologies. So the short answer is probably not. Presentation means Zoom or in-person presentation of those 16 slides. It will likely be Zoom because it would be hard to get everybody together because our reviewers are going to be dispersed as well. So they'll likely be Zoom presentations. Are there any requirements or preferences for disadvantaged businesses? Sarah's typing that answer to you. Is a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan required? At this time, no. But we do we encourage you to, again, involve underrepresented groups in your project teams. The technology we are looking to submit a proposal for nanoceramics that can displace Portland cement and decrease GHG, replace clinker plants, provide construction materials that are fire and hurricane resistant. Is this an area REMADE is looking at? The technology is currently going through Impel at LBL. Again, Portland cement or recycling of Portland cement, replacing Portland cement is not within the scope of what REMADE does. There is another institute that will be announced shortly that's focused on industrial decarbonization. Cement is one of the things that they work on. Next question is prototypes, pilot scale demonstration of a process for the recovery of base and precious metals from electronic waste considered responsive to this topic. Again, we've said as a general rule, if you're proposing a new topic, new project, so B1 through B4, or even A1 and A2, if it isn't a previous funded project, the answer would be no. If it's a REMADE funded project that you've previously gotten funded and you just want to mature the technology, the answer would be yes. Next, I have a team that currently has developed a domestic smart bin prototype currently at TRL4, and the next step is to continue development to pilot at TRL7. The domestic smart bin uses AI and machine learning to recognize recyclable materials and mechanically process them to zero decontamination, higher quality recycled outputs. While this technology achieves the goals of the RFP, it will not assist the traditional recycling system as it completely separates this system. Is such a project eligible? We'll provide an answer to that independent. Want to converse with the TLC and some of the project managers about that. So again, we'll get you an answer and answers for all of these. Will a copy of this presentation be made available for download? We've recorded it. And again, you'll be able to get a hold of that. We'll post it on the website. The review process is long and startup funding is dynamic. At what point in the process is it highly advisable, mandatory that a startup has guaranteed cost shareability? As we talked about before, every project team has to provide one-to-one cost share. And so any cost share commitment letter that you provide that has conditions, if we get Series B funding or Series C funding, we will commit the cost share. That's not allowed. You have to commit the cost share up front. But again, remember, you don't have to do it alone. If you have project team members, they can provide the cost share. So there are ways to do that. For the technology RD&D projects, can you go into more detail on equipment purchases that occur? Sarah is answering that. We'll post that. Topic B4A specifies mechanical and chemical recycling technologies. Does this include microbiological and or biochemical enzymatic recycling as well? So again, as a general rule, no. Bio-based or biochemical enzymatic, tends to fall under the purview of DOE funded projects like BOTTLE. So hopefully that answers your question. Will we get approval for submitted? When will we get approval for submitted summit manuscripts? So I think we sent approvals to everybody, but about 4 or 5 where we're waiting for one of the reviewers to provide comments. So I would say expect that in the next day or 2. We apologize for that delay. When will the industrial decarb RFP be released? So they haven't announced the winner. So my guess is, let's say they announce the winner at the beginning of March. It usually takes about 4 months to negotiate that award. So that would take you into June. If they issue an RFP in the first 6 months, which they may well do, I haven't read that RFP and how they've structured it. A lot of times the first budget period is focused on just getting everything in order to be able to execute in subsequent budget periods. But I would say you might expect something by the end of the year. But again, I have no insight into that beyond that. Who is the contact I can reach out to determine relevance of my research with REMADE scope? Again, put your question in the Q&A, and we will try to answer that for you to the extent that we can. So yeah, so I think that is all of the questions we have. We've got 4 minutes left, so if anybody wants to type in another answer. Again, I want to just thank all of you who have participated today. Hopefully it's been useful for you. If you have questions, please submit them, and we'll try to get you a timely answer. And we look forward to a lot of great proposals. So I'll hold on for a few minutes. Looks like there's another question coming in. When will they release the new EDU FOA? I'm not familiar with the EDU FOA. If you could explain it, I'll try to tackle it. Oh, Education and Workforce Development FOA. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure. I'll have to get with John Krekel and see what that answer is. Another one came in. Do you accept projects for OII recycling for, is it oil recycling for power transformers? If you could clarify that, but as a general answer, no, we don't. But if I misunderstood what you're trying to do, please type in. So for those of you who don't have any more questions, you're welcome to go off. We'll stay on a couple more minutes if questions keep coming in. And again, we'll post these to the FAQ on the REMADE Institute website. Thank you again for giving us an hour and a half of your time. And we look forward to some great proposals. Have a great afternoon. So yeah, clarified oil recycling, no, we don't. So again, thank you for your time today. And looks like people are slowly leaving, and we can provide those answers afterward. Just on the REMADE side, is somebody copying down these questions?
Yes, Magdi.
Yep, these are also being recorded in the cloud, so.
Okay, I wasn't sure if they were going to get recorded. So one question that came in, Sarah, is can we use the funding to cover tuition for PhD students? If you're talking, you're on mute.
Thanks, Magdi. I'm sorry, can you repeat that question? Can we use the funding to cover tuition?
Tuition for PhD students.
So, yeah, I think I'd like to, I mean, I guess my initial reaction would be sure, if that's how the federal funding, if they have cost share to set against the federal funding. I can't think of any prohibition on its use for tuition for students, PhD students.
Yeah, a lot of times, if I'm correct, and we can check with Michelle Gibson on this,
Yeah,
what universities do is they use tuition remission as a cost share.
right. And if they. Yeah, I think we should check with Michelle and get back with a.
Yeah.
There's.
So, I mean, we'll get back with you on that question, but thanks for asking. Sir, there's a question. Is there any limit to use the fund to buy equipment for pilot scale demonstrations?
Yes, so there isn't a limit. You can use the fund to buy equipment for multiple purposes, but the important thing to keep in mind is that if you use federal funds to buy equipment or you offer equipment as part of the cost share for the project, that will attach government rights to that unit of equipment. And so if at the end of the project, the equipment value has essentially depleted in the course of the project, either because time has gone on and that's the ratio that applies, or because of the way the equipment has been used and integrated maybe with other things such that its value is pretty low. Right now, the threshold is $5,000. Then that's it. There's no reporting obligation. There's no accountability for that equipment. But if it's over the $5,000 threshold, then any disposition of that equipment, use for other purposes, sale, transfer is going to be subject to federal government approval, and the government has the right to require payment of its share of the cost or the value of that equipment. So, once you bring equipment into it, the government is going to claim that it has rights over that.
So again, is there any limit? Since you answered that live, can I clip done? So I think we're out of questions. Again, for those of you who stayed on, thank you. And we look forward to working with you over the next couple of months as you work on your proposals. Have a great day.